I don't think you can argue that the greatest basketball career to date, and still adding to it, is LeBron James. I just don't think you can argue that. With all he's been able to accomplish, all the records, and really the longevity is just, really an incredible feat. The best player in any one game to win it, if you had to put all the marbles, to state it, there's a lot of ones that you could go with, but my personal one I would take Jordan to win one game, because I think the combination of athleticism, skill, will, was something, people used to ask, like, what was the name of that special, that ESPN thing they did on him, what was the name of that, Last Dance, right?
Yeah.
They said, you watched The Last Dance. I said, no, I lived it. And so because, he got 55, like, against, he had a double nickel coming back off baseball. 10 days later, against the best defense in basketball, back when the rules were not conducive to offensive play, right? There was no freedom of movement. There was freedom to get your head handed to you if you came through the line, right? He got 55 against the New York Knicks on the road and hit Winnington when we doubled late with a Luka Doncic special, like go up and at the last minute, find somebody, and he found Winnington. And so, like, I never seen anything quite like that. Like, guy goes off and plays baseball for 2 years. Hey, I want to play basketball again. 10 days later, he's getting 55 in the Garden again. It's like, what's happening here? So I would go with him in any one game. But there's a number of guys, comparison is the thief of joy. And I know people love the comparative talk, but I think oftentimes when we get into those conversations, unfortunately, people feel diminished. And I don't think you or I or Blue mean that in any way. We're not diminishing anybody's career if we don't pick them. We just think, like, some of these guys are just, remarkable players.
LeBron James has built a resume so massive and a career so long-lasting that he's rightfully placed among basketball's immortals. But Michael Jordan operated on a level that felt almost mythical. His ability to take over a moment, like that iconic 55-point eruption at Madison Square Garden right after returning from baseball, belonged to an entirely different category of greatness. That wasn't just skill, it was the product of obsession, of a man who spent years being battered by the Detroit Pistons and their ruthless Jordan rules until he turned all that punishment into fuel and reinvented himself into the very definition of a champion. Michael Jeffrey Jordan became basketball's ultimate standard, the figure fans have idolized for 3 decades. The 6 championships, the 5 MVPs, the aura of a competitor who refused to accept defeat. But here's the part most people never stop to consider. Before he became the most intimidating winner basketball would ever fear, Michael Jordan had to be broken first. But not in his body, in his mind. He endured humiliation so sharp and so constant that it nearly pushed him past his limits. And this is the story of how the Detroit Pistons, the league's infamous bad boys, set out to crush him completely but instead ended up forging the most ruthless champion the sport has ever seen. Everything changed on April 20th, 1986, in Game 2 of the first round at the legendary Boston Garden, where Jordan delivered a performance that instantly became NBA scripture, dropping 63 points against the league's toughest defense as over 73,000 fans watched in disbelief, prompting Larry Bird to declare that it was God disguised as Michael Jordan. In that single night, a legend was born, but far away in Detroit, a different plot was unfolding as Chuck Daly and his Pistons, unfazed and unimpressed, quietly began crafting a plan built on bruises, toughness, and pure spite, preparing for the moment they would try to break Jordan before he became unstoppable. They never believed in the idea that Michael Jordan was untouchable. In fact, the Pistons wanted to prove that even a basketball god could be dragged back to earth. By 1988, Jordan had become the league's most explosive superstar, a nightly supernova lighting up every arena he stepped into. But Detroit was unmoved by the highlights. They were quietly constructing a plan, a defensive blueprint so punishing it felt more like warfare than basketball. They called it the Jordan Rules, and it was designed to attack his confidence as much as his scoring. The first rule was simple: force him left, take away every comfortable angle, and smother his right hand at all costs. The second rule demanded instant pressure in the paint. No free layups, no rhythm, no moment to breathe. And the third rule, the one that shaped the entire rivalry, turned every drive into a collision, every step into a battle, every possession into a test of will. Rick Mahorn, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman didn't defend Jordan. They punished him. Each elbow was a warning, each hard foul a challenge asking, "Are you sure you want to come back in here?" The impact showed immediately. In 1988, Detroit dragged Chicago through a bruising 5-game fight that left even Jordan visibly frustrated. And the real nightmare arrived a year later in the 1989 Eastern Conference Finals, where despite averaging nearly 30 points, he shot poorly under the relentless two-man pressure that swallowed him every night. Detroit didn't just defeat Chicago. They fractured Michael Jordan at his core, and by 1990, the breaking point finally arrived. That year's Eastern Conference Finals felt less like a basketball matchup and more like a psychological dissection, with Jordan trapped, crowded, shoved, hit, doubled, and mocked until his shooting numbers crashed to the lowest levels of his career. For the first time, the man who would one day symbolize invincibility looked human, and Isaiah Thomas made sure every missed shot and turnover stung even more as the Pistons celebrated each mistake like a victory. When Chicago fell once again and Jordan walked off with his head lowered, it wasn't just another playoff loss. It was the collapse of everything he believed about himself. In the weeks that followed, Jordan disappeared into a silence fans had never seen, doubting his approach, his mentality, and even his identity as a player, privately admitting he felt trapped and powerless as Detroit accomplished the unthinkable. They broke him. That summer became the darkest but most important turning point of his life, because after being defeated 3 straight years by the same team, he finally accepted a truth he could no longer ignore. Talent alone wouldn't get him past Detroit. To win, he had to transform. So he rebuilt himself from the ground up, starting with his body, adding nearly 15 pounds of muscle under Tim Grover and replacing finesse with strength to withstand the Pistons' punishment. But the real change happened in his mindset as he finally embraced Phil Jackson's triangle offense, realizing the Pistons had exposed the flaw in trying to win alone. They forced him into battles he could never survive in a 1-on-5 war, pushing him toward an evolution that would redefine his entire legacy. Jordan finally committed to the triangle offense: trust, movement, patience, and teamwork. The very qualities he once dismissed as weaknesses, and the 1990-91 season became his proving ground. Instead of trying to beat double teams by himself, he began passing out, finding open shooters, and lifting the players around him, which sharpened his impact and made Chicago a smarter, stronger, fully balanced team. Suddenly, the Pistons' famous Jordan rules had no clear target. They were facing a version of Jordan they couldn't decode. So when Chicago met Detroit in the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals, it was obvious from the opening minutes that the power dynamic had flipped. Every trap Detroit sent turned into a Bulls scoring opportunity. Every foul was absorbed by Jordan's new strength. Every attempt to isolate him failed because he no longer played the hero by himself. Chicago didn't simply beat Detroit. They dismantled the entire identity of the Bad Boys in a 4-game sweep that erased 3 years of torment. And then came the unforgettable ending. As the final seconds expired and the Bulls celebrated, the Pistons, led by Isaiah Thomas, walked off without handshakes or respect, leaving only bitterness behind. Yet in its own way, that moment was perfect. 3 years earlier, Detroit had broken him. Now he stood over them, rebuilt and reborn as the most feared champion of the modern era. The player they tried to destroy had become the one no one could ever break again. And that's the defining difference between simple longevity and the kind of legacy Jordan created. Not just lasting long, but being shattered, rebuilt, and returning as an unstoppable force. Now here's the real question, and I want the comments overflowing with this debate. Was Michael Jordan's evolution the greatest mental comeback the NBA has ever seen, or did another superstar endure even more and rise even higher? Because after finally conquering Detroit, not with solo heroics but with the disciplined, unified style of basketball the Pistons had forced him to adopt, Jordan's transformation was undeniable. Yet his biggest test still waited on the horizon. The NBA Finals against Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers would prove whether the lessons carved into him during those punishing, soul-draining Detroit battles truly forged something unbreakable. The mental armor he built in those Eastern Conference wars would carry him for the next 7 years, shaping him into the most fearsome clutch performer the game has ever witnessed. And if you want a single moment that captures that transformation, nothing does it better than Game 5 of the 1997 NBA Finals, the flu game. Sick, exhausted, dehydrated, and barely able to stay upright. Jordan faced physical misery that could have made any player crumble, just as he once crumbled beneath Detroit's relentless punishment. But this time, he didn't fold. He rose. Instead of collapsing, he tapped into the mental toughness Detroit had once beaten into him, pushing his drained body to score 38 points and dragging Chicago to a season-defining victory. The player the Pistons once broke physically had learned to turn suffering into a weapon. And when you place Jordan's two most iconic postseason moments side by side, the transformation becomes crystal clear. The shot over Elo in 1989 was pure, unfiltered electricity, a wild surge of athletic brilliance from a superstar still driven mostly by instinct. It previewed his power, but it didn't yet translate to championships, because Detroit stood ready to remind him that no lone hero, no matter how talented, can topple a machine built on cohesion and controlled brutality. Nearly a decade later, the final shot against Utah in 1998 was the opposite in every way, not just greatness, but the polished result of 9 grueling years of evolution. The entire sequence played like a blueprint of championship basketball. The steal from Malone, showcasing the defensive discipline he had rebuilt from scratch, the calm pause as he read the floor, the spacing, the rhythm of the triangle offense, and finally, when the moment demanded a singular answer, he delivered the coldest, most perfect dagger of his career to secure title number 6. What made that moment legendary wasn't the shot alone. It was the fully matured basketball mind behind it, a Jordan who no longer relied solely on talent, but on mastery. He learned how to lift an entire team, read and bend defenses, and take control of every ounce of pressure on the court. His journey from 1989 to 1998 wasn't about simply becoming a stronger scorer.